Now, the Christian right in Texas wants to replace school counselors with Christian chaplains.
We've discussed the National School Chaplain Association. Do you remember that conversation?
I do not remember. I don't recall.
The National School Chaplain Association testified in favor of the bill both in the House and the Senate. Have they helped you with this bill at all?
I don't recall. I had input from a lot of different people.
Are you aware that the stated purpose of this organization is to, quote, enhance God's presence by infiltrating the system?
I'm not advised.
Can I just say that I do not seek out stories about Texas for these videos. They just come to me. There's just always so much going on down here. And unfortunately, a lot of what happens here gets exported to and implemented in other red states. So I hope that this story isn't relevant for those of you outside of Texas, but the sad truth is that it might be. So in this clip, Texas Representative James Tallarico, who is a Democrat and a Christian, is questioning the author of the bill on a few specifics. He doesn't seem to have a lot of the answers that Tallarico is looking for, even in cases where he probably should, and at one point, he attempts to throw out the Republicans' favorite red herring to distract from the topic at hand.
Do you think we should encourage the infiltration of our public schools?
You want to know what I really think, Mr. Tallarico? I think it's preposterous that members in here will defend the acts of certain inappropriate drag shows in our schools and inappropriate material in our libraries, and then
Mr. Hefner, confine your
the
comments.
audacity to say that this is a problem.
Now, the red herring is quickly recognized for what it is and tossed aside, which is always nice to see. But that part kind of makes me wonder, do these Republicans actually believe that line about drag queens, even though there is no data to support their claims and plenty of data to refute them? Or are they just using these lines as strategic partisan talking points that the whole party has agreed upon on a national level?
So are you aware that Rocky Malloy has said chaplains are not professional counselors, children don't need professional counseling, they just need to be heard?
I'm not familiar with that.
He said he has a phone app that gives instructions on how to pray with students who are suicidal. Do you believe that the answer to kids who are suicidal is for them to pray and not get professional mental health
That has nothing to
counseling?
do with this bill.
The thing with Christian nationalists and evangelicals is that their entire belief systems are based on believing in things that they cannot see nor prove to be real. So maybe some of them do believe it. In fact, we know that some of them truly hold very zealous Christian values, but in a way, it doesn't matter who believes what or how strongly, because the outcome will be the same either way. So then you have to wonder, why would they care about the outcome if they didn't truly believe in the things they were saying? Some believe that this is all part of a decades-long initiative to redden the red states so that the Republican voting bloc is more formidable in national elections. Right now, we see that even in very red states like Texas, the major metropolitan areas are typically reliably blue. That means that Democratic voters are typically more concentrated than Republican voters, which can give Republicans an advantage with the way votes are counted. By making blue cities in red states less hospitable to Democratic voters, maybe the Democrats will just leave.
Rocky Malloy has stated he wants chaplains going into teachers' classrooms and reviewing every single book available to students. Do you, as the bill author, want chaplains censoring or banning books
No.
in libraries or classrooms? No. Are you familiar that Rocky Malloy describes himself as a former drug smuggling pirate saved by divine intervention?
I'm not aware.
And he's admitted to being convicted of international drug trafficking?
I'm not advised.
The gentleman's time has expired.
We're already seeing this happen in Florida, where the LGBT community has been increasingly demonized and marginalized under Governor Ron DeSantis' leadership. As a direct result, they're leaving their homes in Florida behind. I know I tell my boyfriend at least once a week that we need to move out of this suburb, out of Texas, out of the country. But to be fair, I've always had one foot out the door. But another theory as to why the Republicans are going so hard on public schools, from book bans to curriculum changes to the Ten Commandments to school chaplains, not to mention the rampant school shootings that they refuse to do anything about, is that they're trying to get people to pull their kids out of public schools so that they'll instead put them in private schools. This could all be a ploy by politicians to privatize a public service, presumably enriching themselves in the process. Or Maybe they want the parents to pull kids out of public schools and homeschool them instead. We've already seen Republican politicians push for more homeschooling in the name of parental rights and anti-wokeism, but depending on the state, there is little oversight as to the quality of education these homeschooled kids are actually getting. The more sinister explanation for this push is that Republicans want a dumbed down and more malleable populace that's more vulnerable to propaganda, as well as less informed and therefore more fearful of the world outside of their increasingly small bubbles. The stereotype for homeschooled kids already exists, that they're socially awkward, that they're ignorant of the real world, and that they're oftentimes super religious to the point of holding somewhat cultish beliefs. And to be fair, I met homeschooled kids who very much fit that stereotype, but I've also met some who seem to have transcended the social struggles of their upbringings, at least as far as I'm aware. But the Washington Post just published a piece that suggests that the Republican push for more homeschooling might not be going so well. While there was a significant increase in homeschooling in recent years, much of which was the result of pandemic-related school closures, and I think it's safe to assume that school shootings probably contributed to the increase as well, a lot of that increase was also part of a concerted effort by evangelicals to get kids out of public schools and keep them home. One couple, quote, had been raised to believe that public schools were tools of a demonic social order, government indoctrination camps devoted to the propagation of lies and the subversion of Christian families. The article goes on to say of the homeschooling movement that it was, quote, led by deeply conservative Christians who saw homeschooling as a way of life, a conscious rejection of contemporary ideas about biology, history, gender equality, and the role of religion in American government. Now, the article also mentions the HSLDA, or the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, an activist organization that fought for the legality of homeschooling in the 80s and 90s. The article says, quote, among conservative Christians, homeschooling became a tool for binding children to fundamentalist beliefs they felt were threatened by exposure to other points of view. Rightly educated, those children would grow into what HSLDA founder Michael Ferris called a Joshua generation that would seek the political power and cultural influence to reshape America according to biblical principles. Gross. And there you have it. It's a very long article, so there's a lot more to it, but it's a scary prospect to have people who were raised in, again, such small bubbles leading a population that they don't understand and have scarcely interacted with. People become less ignorant and less fearful of the world and its people with exposure. These conservative Christians are actively rejecting exposure, actively choosing ignorance and fear of anything different from what they're used to, which makes life more difficult for the rest of us. Now, some parents who were homeschooled themselves are rejecting the notion that public schools are demonic or whatever because they're understanding now, as adults, that their own homeschool educations were significantly lacking. What parent would consciously want to keep their child developmentally behind? And I'm not saying the public school system is perfect. It certainly is not. There is a ton of room for improvement. But with politicians, including those working in the Department of Education, constantly bashing and defunding public education, you can't be surprised that it's in the state that it's in. Now, for a party that speaks so much about the children, they would rather cling to their own faulty beliefs to maintain their comfort in ignorance than to actually try to be better for their children. They would rather live with their own trauma as a matter of personal identity, inevitably, if not deliberately, passing that trauma down to their children, than trying to find a way to break those patterns of belief and behavior. And I know it's an oversimplification, but I feel so many of the issues in this country would be made better with better investment and support of public, secular education. But instead, here we are. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you.